What unique strategies can help you turn your architectural firm into a creative powerhouse with a long line of happy clients? I'm joined by Bryon McCartney, who shares what he's learned from founding 5 successful creative firms in this episode of Architecture Business Club, the weekly podcast for solo and small firm architecture practice owners just like you who want to build a profitable, future-proof architecture business that fits around their life. I'm the host, John Clayton, and if you want a business in architecture that gives you more freedom, flexibility and fulfillment, then go to architecturebusinessclub.com/blueprint and download the Architecture Business Blueprint. It's the step-by-step formula to freedom for architects, architectural technologists and architectural designers, and it's absolutely free as a gift from me. Now let's dig into Bryon's story. Bryon McCartney is CEO at ArchMark Branding and Marketing for Architects and a certified coach through Donald Miller's Business Made Simple program. Bryon has helped over 3,000 architects increase their firm's visibility and influence so they can win better projects. Bryon has travelled around the world and calls himself an Archi-Geek. He has been featured in ArchDaily, ArchiBiz, Business of Architecture, Entrearchitect, Zweig Group and many others. You can speak to Bryon directly by booking a free clarity call at archmark.co, and I will drop a link in the show notes. Bryon, welcome to Architecture Business Club.
John, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here on the show. Bryon, I know that you're, aside from everything you do in the world of architecture and marketing, you're also a very passionate photographer. Could you tell me a little bit about that pastime?
Yeah, in 2000, had the opportunity to move to Switzerland. My wife and I moved to Switzerland, and around about that time, I had bought a digital camera. It was my first digital camera. And so I started taking a lot of photographs as we were traveling around Europe, around Switzerland, getting to see the, all the different countries, and then all the Alps and all the countryside in Switzerland, taking tons of photos. And I actually started a small website around that time just to share photos with family and friends. And I think it was about a year into it or so, one of my wife's former work colleagues was like, wow, Bryon's taking some great photos. Has he ever thought about doing that professionally? And it's funny because when I worked in Chicago early in my career, I was kind of known as the compositing guy. I had started working in Photoshop very early on, and so knew a lot about how to work with digital images. And so kind of use that information and knowledge, and then having worked with a lot of photographers on set, I learned about lighting as well. I ended up going professional with photography for quite some time. One of the agencies that my wife and I founded was based around storytelling, visual storytelling, and so photography and video played a big role in that. And I also won a lot of awards, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed taking images, creating images.
Oh, that's amazing. I really do appreciate a good photo. I was a little bit of an amateur photographer a few years ago with my DSLR camera, and I enjoy going and looking at a few photography exhibitions if I'm in like London or somewhere. But that's about as far as it extends for me. At the moment, my photography seems to be mainly on my smartphone. But,
yeah, that's, to be honest, that's my number one camera these days. I always just say the best camera is the one you have with you and the one you use all the time. I end up taking a lot more photos these days with my phone than my actual cameras.
Absolutely, yeah, that's it. If you've got the decent phone camera, most of them are pretty decent, and you've got it with you. It's to be doing photography and using that rather than having something sat in the cupboard that's like gathering dust. We're not going to talk about photography though for the whole episode, as much as we probably could. We are going to talk about some of the key things that you have learned over the years from founding and managing 5 successful creative service firms, so that architects can learn from what you've already figured out through those experiences. To begin with, could you just give me a brief introduction to those 5 firms?
Yeah. So I started my entrepreneurial career. I think it was in my late 20s or so, probably about 28 or so, when I first started basically freelancing. I started out as a freelancer. I was in Chicago. It was the late 90s. Websites were just starting to, take off. I was still doing a lot of print work at that time, but I was also doing digital work. And so I ended up becoming a pretty much full-time. We called it permalance back then, right? It was like I was a freelancer. I didn't get the benefits, but I had the capability to kind of call off whenever I wanted, and I got paid better than most of the salary employees because I didn't have the benefits. But I worked at Unilever. That was my main client. I also worked for Leo Burnett Advertising on campaigns for United. I also had direct clients like the University of Illinois at Chicago, both their business school and their medical schools. I did a lot of publication work for them. With Unilever, that's where I really got my start in web design and online branding. I was working with brands like Calvin Klein, Lipton Foods, Schwab Personal Care. If you're familiar with the Unilever, you know that it's the house of brands. There's tons of different products and brands within that. So our team at Unilever, I was the creative director for. We set the initial strategies for a lot of these brands online. So we did the initial testing, and then if things were successful, it would obviously get funded and go to DDB Needham or J. Walter Thompson or somebody like that. But it was a lot of fun. We got to do a lot of experimentation. From there, I had the opportunity to go to Switzerland. As I mentioned, my wife, through her company, they wanted to start a headquarters in Switzerland. We weren't married at the time, so I had to go find my own job. I ended up becoming the COO and creative director for Wirtz Interactive. So Wirtz Interactive was based in Zurich, Switzerland. They were a large advertising group, and I worked with them. I was an employee there for a few years, and then we decided to merge with another firm, and so we founded and created this new entity called Asai. And at the time, I believe we were the largest digital marketing firm in Switzerland. We worked with General Motors, Clariant, Roche, Nestle, Knorr, many others. So then in 2006, I had left Asai. I was starting to work on my own again. I started a little freelance studio in Switzerland. And then in 2006, I got really busy. I landed a huge client, and my wife, who had been working with her for 19 years, she said to me, I said, hey, I need to hire somebody. I need an assistant or somebody to help me, do invoicing and all this. My wife said to me, well, what would this person do? How much would they get paid? Well, we ended up founding our first agency together, and that was called Image Engineers. That was in 2006. And we worked with a lot of global manufacturing companies like Alstom and Sulzer, Zolke, many others. After we moved back to the U.S. in 2012, we founded Be Brilliant. That was a marketing agency in Fort Myers, Florida, that was really built around the needs of small businesses, small local businesses. Then we started Ark-Mark. That was 2016. We had worked with a business coach, and he had said to us, hey, you need to focus on a niche. And we had recently worked with an architect, and we really liked the experience of working with that architect. So we decided to go all in. We joined a local AIA chapter, started networking with architects, and kind of the rest is history from that. So that's the five that, in our pre-interview, I was trying to think about it. And there was actually two other companies that we founded. So there was Viewfinder Center, which is a digital photography and education, kind of like an education excursion company that we sold off in 2012. And then currently I'm in the process of launching a new coaching business. So since I became a Donald Miller certified business coach with the Business Made Simple program, I'm launching a new program to capitalize on that. So yeah, I've had a few irons in the fire over the years, so busy boy here.
So, Brian, can you tell me how you approach taking action on new ideas or opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, John, like 10 years ago, I had a completely different thought process or approach to things. To be honest, I was very reactive, right? And I think at that time probably frustrated my team immensely. I was constantly changing course, constantly reacting to ideas or things that I maybe saw in the news or things happening inside, outside of my business. A new trend would come along and I'd be like, oh, something new and shiny. We gotta stop and we gotta change course. Like there's a new thing we gotta take advantage of.
Shiny object syndrome.
Oh yeah. I still suffer from that a bit, but it would happen over and over again, and to be honest, I look back on that and I realized I was just probably immature. I was probably insecure as well. I was just grabbing at anything I could to be kind of competitive, right? And I think I've grown a lot since then. I now take a much more measured and I would say probably mature approach to new ideas and opportunities. I think it's really important. Anybody running a business, I have learned that being reactive to things, chasing trends, technology tools, in the hope of transforming my business and so on, I think that's a clear sign that you don't have a plan. You're just kind of winging it. And so when it comes to new ideas, I've adopted a simple approach. And this was shared to me by one of my coaches, Brad Martineau. He's with 6th Division, great guy, super, super smart. And he sells these hats. This is DALR, Decide, Act, Learn, Repeat. And so what that means is, first you have to be decisive. You have to make a decision. Is this worth my time? More importantly, is it worth me getting distracted from my priorities, right? What's really important in my business? Is this something that's going to take me off track? Is it going to be disruptive to me, my team? I want as few disruptions as possible these days, right? I'm not getting younger. I'm not this, super multitasker that I used to think I was, even though I was probably running around with my head cut off. I want things to be structured. I want to be predictable in my business. And so let's say we do find something like, I don't know, a new tool, new technology, right? Let's say it passes that first test, like that first hurdle. Yes, we've made a decision. We're going to go forward. So the next thing you do is you need to take action. You need to act. You need to figure out, okay, well, how am I making time for this thing? Or how am I giving my team time for this thing? What energy and effort am I going to use to focus on this so that we can create some implementation around it? So it's not just a thing that distracted us and then we kind of put it on a shelf. How are we actually going to take action? And that may mean dedicating resources, going through training. We don't want this to just be an endless thing. We want to put some parameters around it. Like, hey, we're going to spend 2 weeks. We're going to spend a month. We're going to spend 6 months. Whatever that time frame is, we need to decide. Once we've decided that we're going to take action, we need to put some parameters around the action. And we need to be able to figure out within a certain amount of time, are we going to be able to implement this successfully, right? The next thing you got to do is you have to learn. So let's say we did implement that. Let's say it failed or it was a success. Now we got to take some time and this isn't just a fleeting thing. Like we actually have to analyze, like, what did we do? What worked? What didn't work? We got to break that down. We have to learn from what we did. If we failed, why did we fail? Was there some small change, something that we could have tweaked to make it a success? If it was successful, okay, what can we do to make it more successful now? We did one round of implementation. What are we doing the second time around? And that's where we get to the R, repeat, right? We have to repeat, but we're not just going to blindly repeat and do the same thing we did before. We want to improve the process now. We want to improve what we did. So that structure, I think, is really helpful in just getting more value out of these distractions. We all have them. They're all there, right? For architects, it might be like, oh, hey, we're a residential company, and we focus on this. But then, one of our clients works at Microsoft, and now they want to have us do a retreat center for their executives. Okay, well, we've never done a retreat center. That's a distraction. How are we evaluating that? What are we going to learn from it? Are we going to repeat it? Those are all important things that we have to consider in that process. So that's where I'm at these days.
I love that you've found a very methodical approach to this, because I think particularly people that are architects and firm owners, people that work in creative industries often have an abundance of ideas, and we just don't have we have a finite amount of resources to follow up these ideas. So having something like what you've described, where it's a bit more strategic, there's a system, there's alignment with the overall goals and objectives of the business before we just go and pursue the next shiny new thing. I can definitely relate to that, because I know myself that in the past I've been so distracted by ideas and new things, and so it's a really helpful structure that you shared.
As a photographer, it was horrible, right? Because every year and a half they come out with a new camera, and it's all got all these new features, and it can be a month to 3 months to 6 month process just learning how to use a new camera and integrating it into a workflow as a professional, at least, deciding what you're going to use from that, what new features are important to you, how is this going to help you do your job better? Those are important considerations. It's not just a toy. It's a tool that you have to use, and the more you can master that tool, the better you are as a photographer. And I think a lot of people approach things, a lot of creative people, we have all these ideas, we have all these things that we want to do, but we can't do them all. We have to make decisions. We have to act on those decisions. We have to learn from them, and then we have to figure out if we're going to repeat them. And that's a great way to kind of think of it.
Let's have a little talk about sales. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on what architects get right and what they get wrong when it comes to sales.
Yeah. Sales is a really funny word in the world of architecture. I think architects have gone out of their way to kind of remove it from their vocabulary. You don't hear a lot about sales in the profession. I think they even, they've come up with some other words like qualification or, business development. One of my favorites. It's like, okay, nobody really can explain that to me. But you got contract negotiation, customer success processes, shortlisting. You got seller doers, right? You got all these different terms that, try to soften the idea that we're actually selling. But at the end of the day, that's exactly what you're doing. You're selling your services in exchange for money. And that's, it is a sales process. And at some point, I guess the profession decided that, sales is smarmy, it's like, they're thinking of used car guys and whatever. I think, a lot of professionals kind of share this opinion that this idea of sales is kind of icky, right? And, when they think of sales, they think of somebody, like that used car salesman or something. They're performing wallet surgery, right? They're trying to get the most out of the customer as they can. And this is where I think our views on sales have to change. Sales is not about extracting the most money out of the client. It's about creating solutions for them, right? You're not selling a product as an architect. You're selling a solution. You're selling a new workspace that's going to energize your employees, going to make them proud, going to make them more productive. It's about providing value for your clients. That's what sales is. What's that problem that you're going to solve for them? That's what you're selling. I think a lot of architects struggle with sales because they are convinced that clients are coming to them for design. They don't. That's not what they're coming to for. Mr. and Mrs. Jones do not wake up one day and look at each other and say, honey, we need to hire an architect to redesign our house to make it the most spectacular home in the neighborhood. That's not what, like, design is not the first thing that comes to their mind. I mean, there may be some people that do, but that's going to be the oddball. 90% of your clients, they are much more focused on, how do we need to change this home to fit our lifestyle? Our lifestyle's changed. We're doing different things. We're doing more entertaining. We want our grandkids to come visit. We need to redesign our home to fit our needs. It's about solutions. And if you can't connect your sales process to solutions, then all you're competing on is price. And that's where you don't want to be as an architect. You don't want to be a commodity. You want to be a problem solver. That's what you were trained to do. That's what you need to sell. So yeah, that's my view on that. But
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think if we can encourage people to move away from this idea that sales is something really sleazy and it's a dirty word, it isn't. It's like, if you don't get sales, like, you don't have a business. And actually, like, rewiring your brain, you mentioned there it's about solutions. And I think that if we can think of it that you're helping them solve a problem in their lives. If we think about it that way, and some money changes hands and there's some work.
Or in their business, right? Like, I have a client in Sarasota, here in Florida, and he helped his client redesign this restaurant. It's an outdoor restaurant. It's on the coast in Florida. They were able to triple their liquor sales because they could seat more people in the bar because they had indoor-outdoor seating. They increased the capacity of their kitchens so they could serve more tables at a time. It completely, their business, I don't know, I know the liquor sales tripled. I think the overall revenue more than doubled just because of that. Just because of this architect thinking about, like, okay, how do we solve these problems? How do we get more people? How do we get more butts in seat? How do we get more people ordering drinks, right? And that type of thinking, I mean, I think clients really appreciate that. That's where you're looking beyond, like, okay, yeah, we're going to redesign this, but the design has to be the solution. It's the solution to that client's problem. That's what we need to focus on. If you won't have a problem selling that.
I think if architects can communicate that value, if they've got projects that they've done, like you've described, to be able to communicate that and quantify that as part of that sales process, it's going to be so much easier to get sales and to be able to charge more for the services that you offer. Can we talk a little bit about strategic planning? What role has strategic planning played in the growth of your creative service firms?
Yeah, I was talking earlier about being reactive, and strategic planning is really, since we've started doing strategic planning, I think we started doing strategic planning about 8 years ago. Even though I've been running businesses for a long time, since, like 1998, I only discovered strategic planning in the context of how it can help my business about 8 years ago. Before that, we had done business plans and things like that. You do it, you put it on a shelf, and then it's like it sits there and stares at you, and you need to look at it every now and then, but it's not something that's in your face. But I started working with this coach. His name's Brent Weaver. He's with a company called You Gurus, and he introduced us to strategic planning, and in the process, I think what happened is we went from being this reactionary kind of business to being this business with purpose and determination.
Remember, don't forget to download the Architecture Business Blueprint, the step-by-step formula to freedom for architects, architectural technologists, and architectural designers. You can grab the blueprint without any charge at architecturebusinessclub.com/blueprint. And if you're enjoying this episode, then please leave a 5-star review or rating wherever you listen to podcasts. Now back to the show.
By clarifying our goals, by setting, benchmarks for where we wanted to be in 90 days, in a year, in 3 years, in 10 years, it gave us a sense of purpose and identity as well. Like we now felt like, oh, wait a minute, hey, if we're gonna accomplish these goals, what does that say about us as a business, right? And as a result, over the last 8 years, we've been way more successful too, way more consistent. I think that, I think a lot of people struggle with strategic planning because they see it as this like complex, boring process. We got to get everybody together. We got to, hash out all our ideas. And, my wife and I, we do our strategic planning every 90 days. It takes us 1 to 2 hours max. We follow a system. Anybody can look this up. It's based on the entrepreneur operating system. There's a book out there called Traction by Gino Wickman. If you go to their website, you'll find it's called the Vision Traction Organizer. It's a framework for doing your strategic planning. It's fantastic. And instead of like taking in all these considerations, what it allows you to do is focus on the drivers of your business. Now, we've identified for architects, there's basically 5 key drivers. There's project inquiries, there's nurturing prospects, there's the contract and proposal stage. How do we sell? How are we converting them into a client? Then there's the delivery of the project, and finally there's the retention. Are we getting them to give us a referral, or are they coming back for another project? I have done this planning. I think that I'm kind of embedded in the Entrearchitect community with Mark LePage and his community. I'm a coach within that community. And we've done this planning session with that community. And, I've had people come to me later and say, "Oh my God, this is amazing." One of them was a client of ours. So just to give you an example, ever since he started implementing this, he has hit his revenue goals every quarter. He lost 60 pounds because he applied it to his personal life. How great is that, right? Like he said, I need to be healthier. I'm going to create a strategic plan for my health. And he's seeing a lot of success. So, I think we have to remove this idea that strategic planning is this like cumbersome, complicated process, and look at it as something that we have to do as a routine, as just something that's a responsible part of running a business, right? And doing that in a systematic way so that we can gradually tune our business over time for the success that we want, and have that purpose and determination in the process.
I couldn't agree more. I did a podcast episode recently about writing business plans. And one of the takeaways from that was that the first time I wrote a business plan, it was this really long, lengthy document that sat in a drawer and gathered dust for many years. And upon reflection, it was, not the best way to go about business. Whereas really, that document, whatever you want to call it, where you set out those, your vision and your mission and your objectives, that should be something that's actively reviewed throughout the course of your business. You're actually, monitoring your success, working towards those goals. So very, very important.
Yeah, I think the more clarity you can have around what's important, what the priorities are for your business, around your purpose, your plan, I think, the more success you're going to be able to create. It's like I said before, instead of being reactive, instead of dealing with all these distractions, what are you able to focus on? What is the one thing that you're going to do to move your business forward over the next, 90 days, a year, whatever time frame you decide? How are creating a plan for that is really important in business if you want to succeed.
How do you build trust with clients?
This is a great question, and it relates to what is a bit of a soapbox issue for me. I have a big pet peeve. So a lot of architects will complain. I see it online in forums. I see it. They tell me this when we talk. They complain that they sent a proposal and never heard back from the prospect. And this is a pet peeve because sending a proposal and waiting for a response is probably one of the biggest mistakes you can make. And everybody does it. Everybody. You're just setting your process up for failure. In sales, trust is the most important currency you have. And you have to build that trust. It's not something that comes because somebody visited your website or somebody got a referral from you. You have to build that trust. So when you send them a proposal and give them time, you're telling yourself, well, I'm just being polite and I'm taking the pressure off and whatever. However, that client still has questions. They still have concerns. And now you've left them on their own to kind of figure it out on their by themselves. So years ago, Kelly and I, we had the same problem. My wife, Kelly, and I, we had the same problem in our business. We were sending proposals and people were ghosting us. Crickets, no response, right? It was like, oh, let's just send another proposal into the black hole of nothingness, right? And, we went through a similar process. They would contact us, say, hey, we're interested in doing a project, a website, a logo, whatever. They would come into our office or we would go to them. We'd have a nice long meeting, maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours. We collect all this information, and then the expectation was that we were going to go away, we were going to create a proposal, and then we were going to send it to them, right? And we did this over and over, and 9 times out of 10, nothing, zero, zip, zilch, crickets, no response, right? And we knew that, here's the problem. All they knew about us was we had met together, we had a meeting. We inundated them with questions. Maybe there were a few calls or emails afterwards, but they didn't know us. And as a result, we ended up starting to ride this cash flow roller coaster, right? It was like getting this, trying to get to more people, to get more opportunities, to send them proposals that we weren't going to hear back on. Right. And hoping that 1 out of 10 of those was going to land and we were going to get a job. And so we had to change things. We ended up, this business coach that I mentioned, Brent Weaver, had a boot camp on how to revise your sales process. And I loved it. It was amazing. It completely transformed how we approach prospecting, sales, and onboarding. And since then, we've developed a much improved process where we take people through clear steps in our process. Like if you want to be a client with ours, there's actually 3 or 4 steps you got to go through just so that we can get to the point of, hey, let's have a discussion about actually working together, because we want to educate you. We want you to know how we're going to work. And at the same time, we're using those opportunities to collect more information, to give them more opportunity to ask questions, and also to build that trust. What Brent taught us in that boot camp was that trust equals interactions over time. And so what that means is that in our process, we have more steps. They're typically shorter steps. They're compartmentalized. They're designed. Each step is designed to produce a certain result or give us certain information. And the way we position that to clients is like, hey, we have a process for how we work. Clients love that. Oh, you have a process, right? Yeah. If they ask us for a proposal, we say, no, we don't do that. That's not how we work. We're going to go through our process. And the value for them is that they're going to get a much more complete and much more valuable outcome from us. And so at the end of the day, we're taking them through this process, giving them the opportunity to ask those questions, to address their concerns, and for them to get to know us better. Each of those interactions, we have a little bit of rapport building. We have a little bit, tell us a little bit more about it, how you got started and so forth. We're getting to know each other, and that is getting them to be more comfortable. It's getting them to understand who we are and how we work and our approach to things. And so, yeah, that's how we approach building trust. And a lot of people, when they hear this, they go, well, God, that sounds like a lot more time than just sending a proposal. And yes, there is a bit of a time add to that, but 9 times out of 10, those people are becoming clients. So that extra work gets extra volume and extra money in our pockets, and that's time well worth spending, in my opinion, right?
Yeah, it's much better to have less inquiries and a higher conversion rate than just like sending out loads of proposals and it's crickets. So
I think about, I had a client that we worked with from South Africa, and he was very concerned about Instagram when we first met him. We want to be on Instagram. And I said, well, tell me why you want to be on Instagram. And he said, well, one of our competitors, they have like 200,000 followers on Instagram. And I was like, wow, that's impressive. And I said, how many do you have? And they said, well, we have 100. And I said, I'll tell you right now. I said, I would rather have 100 raving fans on Instagram than 200,000 followers, because you're more likely to get clients out of a group of people who are really invested and really, really interested in what you're doing than you are 200,000 people that are following you because they're, their aunt's best friend's, niece is following them, right? It's like 200,000 people is great, but you have to find the people who are really going to engage with you. That's always going to be, that's going to trump anything you can do, with a mass following, right? So,
absolutely.
So that's the way I look at it.
While we're on the subject of people, being a solo architect or particularly if you work at home, it can be lonely. It can be lonely running a business. So, what are the benefits we can gain from joining a community of like-minded professionals?
Here's the one thing I would say for any solo architects out there, or anybody running, or a partner maybe of a small firm. Here's the simple fact. We live in a complicated world. We live in a busy, noisy world, right? The unfortunate thing is that most architects have not been given the skills and education they need to know how to run a business effectively. So what I'm going to say, and this might offend some architects out there who think they can do it all on their own, but you can't. You can't do everything on your own. You cannot solve every problem on your own. I know you've all been trained as problem solvers, and that's what you do. But, unless you've been to business school, unless you have a lot of experience running a firm, there are going to be problems that you're going to need help with. And joining a community, I'm a big fan of Entrearchitect. I'm a member of that community. I'm one of the only non-architect. I'm one of the few non-architect members of that community. My wife is another one, and there's a few other. There's maybe 3 or 4 others. As a non-architect, I look in that community a lot. I see the discussions that are happening, and what I see is I see a lot of people sharing information. If you're an architect and you feel lonely, it's on you, because there are tons of architects out there who are willing to share what has worked for them, and contribute to a community. And so I implore you to find a community like that. Join a mastermind group. Get involved in, there's Facebook groups out there. Not all of them are great, but some of them are really good. Like Entrearchitect's Facebook group is excellent. They have great discussions. People helping each other solve problems, even like down to the level of like, what do I need to know about code and, things like that. But also questions about business and how do I do things more effectively? So be willing to expand your knowledge, be willing to learn from others. And I think joining a community is an excellent way to do that.
I love being part of communities. I'm a part of a number of different groups, online and with sort of in-person elements as well. And it's so valuable for sharing ideas. Watch this space for the Architecture Business Club community coming soon.
There you go. Nice plug.
Get a little plug in there. This has been so valuable, Brian. I'm so glad that you found some time in your calendar to come and share some of your expertise on the show. What's the main thing that you would like people to take away from this conversation?
I think it's just, we talked about being part of a community, but I think be willing to look outside your profession for answers and inspiration. I'm not an architect, but I do have a design education. I went to school for graphic design. And what I have learned over the years is that, being a good designer isn't solely about sitting in front of your desk doing design iterations all day. That does not make you a good designer. Design is about psychology. It's about sociology. It's about understanding nature and mechanics. It's about art and science. And you can't get seduced by, especially if you're an owner, don't get seduced by the activity of design. Design is a thought process. What you do with your hand is part of it, but it's the bigger stuff happens here in your head. It's a thought process. And at its core, it has to be about the needs of humanity and nature, right? That is what we have to be about. So you can't just sit here and think like, hey, I can do another massing study. I can do another master plan, right? It's not, you have to interact with people. You have to talk to people. What are their needs? What do they want? That's the most important thing you should remember as a firm owner, is that at the end of the day, your success, the success of your firm, it relies on people, whether that's employees, whether it's clients, whether it's colleagues, whether it's the building department. Relies on people. You have to be successful in working with people and building relationships. And you have to make it clear how you're helping and serving people. If that doesn't come through in your website, your proposals, your presentations, are you putting design first, or are you putting your clients first, right? And if you don't know, like if you're looking at your website and you're going, well, yeah, I don't know what to do with it. That's when you need to talk to somebody like me, or, I think you've had Nikita on your program. She's also great. There's some of us out here that really understand architects, and we're here to help you think through these things and help you relate what you do, the value of what you do, to the problems of the people that you're trying to help. And yeah, that's my kind of parting shot.
This has been awesome, Brian. Thanks so much. Was there anything else you wanted to say that we haven't covered?
No, I would just remind people, like we said I think you said it in the beginning, like if you want to talk, if you want to have a conversation with me, I invite you to do so. Just go to our website, archmark.co, not .com, .co, ARCHMAR.co. We have a button at the top that says start here. You can schedule a clarity call with me, and we can talk about some of these things and see how we can help you.
That's awesome. There's one last thing I wanted to ask you, and it's nothing about the topic, but I love to travel and discover new places. I was just wondering if you could just tell me about one of your favorite places and what you love about it.
Yeah, I would say if you ever get the chance, visit the Val d'Orcia in southern Tuscany. I've done several photography workshops in that region. It's a fantastic region. There's a village called San Quirico d'Orcia. It's along the highway that leads to Siena and ultimately down to Civita, and then to Rome. Beautiful countryside, rolling hills. There's a little village just south of San Quirico, and there's a wonderful winemaker there. It's called Sante Marie. His name's Franco. He can't speak a word of English, but I could sit there and listen to him all day. He just talks about wine and nature and everything, and it's just a wonderful experience. Wonderful cheesemakers around that region. Wonderful if you like Chiana beef, which I do. It's the only red meat that I really like anymore. It's wonderful. Yeah, it's just a great place to go and relax and get in touch with. I think kind of like a more basic way of life, and yeah, I love it there. Love it there.
Sounds wonderful. And I'm actually on a little bit of a health kick this week, but now I'm just dreaming of like cheese and wine. Now you've mentioned it. So
well, the lovely thing about going to someplace like Southern Tuscany is that you tend to do a lot of walking. There's a lot of hills. You go to Montepulciano or Montalcino. They're hill towns. So you got to walk up and down if you want to get places. So you get a little exercise in, then you stop off for some homemade pasta, Nona's homemade pasta. And yeah, it's wonderful. I love it there. The summertime is a great place, great time to be there. Right around now is the ideal time to be there. It's wonderful.
Sounds amazing. Brian, where's the best place online? Like, is there a particular social media platform that you hang out on most?
Yeah, please. Hey, if you're listening to this still, if you've made it this far, connect with me on LinkedIn. Don't just send me a friend request. Those just send me a note with your connection. Say, hey, I heard you on John's podcast. Connect with me there. I love connecting with people on LinkedIn. I think of all the social media platforms, LinkedIn is the one where most architects should be. I know a lot of people think, Instagram's great. It's great if you want to show off your portfolio, but if you want to see some great discussions about architecture, about running a business as an architect, LinkedIn, there's some great influencers on that platform, and I won't call myself one of them. I don't post often enough, but I do like to comment on other people's content. So people like Nikita, Tyler Simula, Jake Rudin from Out of Architecture. Yeah, there's some wonderful people on there, and they're creating great content, and I appreciate all of them. There's a great community on there for architects for sure.
I love LinkedIn. It's my favorite platform too. So this has been awesome. So thanks again, Brian. We'll catch up soon.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
Next time, I'll be talking about in-person events and networking. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Architecture Business Club. If you liked this episode, think other people might enjoy it, or just want to show your support for the show, then please leave a glowing 5-star review or rating wherever you listen to podcasts. It would mean so much to me and makes it easier for new listeners to discover the show. And if you haven't already done so, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss another episode. If you want to connect with me, you can do that on most social media platforms. Just search for @Mr. John Clayton. The best place to connect with me online, though, is on LinkedIn. You can find a link to my profile in the show notes. Remember, running your architecture business doesn't have to be hard, and you don't need to do it alone. This is Architecture Business Club.